Hey, I want to welcome our Kennesaw Happening podcast viewers. We have somebody that knows a little bit about history within the Kennesaw area. So we've actually, I think we had to bribe him in an ethical way to get him on here, but we did. That's good for you viewers. So Joshua, would you introduce yourself, who you are, your position, and who you serve within the Kennesaw area?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Joshua Whitfield. I'm the curator of the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History. We're a Smithsonian affiliate museum, and we are a city organization. We're with the city of Kennesaw, and we basically do Civil War history, locomotive history, Southern history, the whole shebang. So I'm very happy to be here, Pete. Can I call you Pete?
Oh, we are too, because a lot of times we have commercial people on and they're talking about different things, but when we have a chance to dig into the history and the history of Kennesaw, that's our viewers like that content and like that, message. So how did you get into this position?
Well, I was working at the Museum of Aviation at Robins Air Force Base. I really wanted to get back into 19th century history, 1800s, Southern history. And when this position opened up, I applied. I had previously done a little work in my graduate program with Civil War memory studies. So this was a very familiar topic for me. I wasn't really a train person when I got here, but I love locomotives now. They're fantastic. Steam locomotives are my favorite. It's really incredible the amount of engineering that goes into making these things run. But I've been here since about late 2022, so I'm coming up on a 1-year anniversary. So I'm very excited to be here in Kennesaw.
Well, that's and then we're excited to have you here because we like people that enjoy and are passionate about what they do. So when you said like steam locomotive, like for our viewers, what's so unique about it? What would you share with them?
Well, one thing I find interesting about steam locomotives at this point in time, and from the early 1800s to even up into the later 1800s, is that people didn't really fully understand how they worked when they were making them. It was really just a process of trying to get heat to transfer from one place to another. And people had been using steam engines for a little while at that point, but they didn't really understand how heat transfer works, how thermodynamics work. So they're really on the cutting edge, the frontier of this technological revolution. And it's incredible to think that, if they had something wrong with the design, that consequences will happen. Boilers are very high pressure. They do explode when things go wrong. But it's a remarkably inefficient kind of engine, but one that completely transformed our nation's industrial capacity, our transportation, our communications. It's an incredible piece of machinery. So it's fascinating to me. I love it. It's a very interesting history.
What prepared you for that? So you growing up and get interested in certain things. Was there something like, and they always say what we did in a sandbox kind of leapfrogs us into other things in life. So what if you go back, what got you interested in history or just what you're doing now?
I think I was just fascinated by the story aspect of history, because history is not just, it's not necessarily like a hard science or anything. There's a story that has to be crafted with it. And each individual historian, museum professional, or average community member who is just passionate about history is adding to that story and trying to explain something about the past that we haven't seen. So I was always drawn to the story angle of history, and it's something that really makes facts and dates and things like that meaningful, because you're giving that kind of context.
Yeah. So I agree with you. Like, tell us more about how we I've always heard the transformation of the railroad industry and what it did. So to take our viewers back a few years, like what can you share with them of how the impact that it made on where we are today? I mean, obviously moving things around, but share with our viewers something like that.
Well, it's partly an infrastructure story. It's partly a economic story, partly transportation. You got to remember a couple decades prior to the steam locomotives coming onto the scene, the best way to get around was by boat. So shipping typically happened along the coast. If you're trying to get from New York to Charleston, South Carolina, you have to, for the most part, you have to take boat to get there. Our nation decided to start investing in other kinds of transportation, like canals. We all are very familiar with the story of the canal system. It's tied up in the railroad story as well, because eventually people realize, oh, if I get a big machine full of water and heat that can pull X amount of weight, it doesn't matter how fast that's going. I can move a lot of people and a lot of goods across a long distance very fast. And it's still going to be faster than by car or by mule. Well, cart, by cart or by mule or by foot. So eventually you start seeing these private initiatives, for the most part, with certainly a lot of public investment behind it, begin to connect different points on the map to try to build this network. And the thing that you have to remember about that as it's being built is that it's a lot of little individual networks that are being connected over time. So sometimes you run into situations where some of the early locomotives would have different gauges or widths of track that wouldn't connect. So one track might be 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide. One might be 5 feet wide. And it takes a different train to run on those kinds of tracks for the most part. Mm-hmm. So eventually, our nation and other nations had to figure out ways to try to standardize that, rope that in. And while that's happening, the technology behind locomotives are also improving over time. They're getting more efficient. They're becoming faster. They're able to carry more weight over longer distances. It's a huge engine for our economy, too, because now you can transport frozen food. If you have like an ice car, you can transport a lot of people in a relatively quick amount of time. When it connects to our western frontier, it really drives a westward push for the people who live in America. They tend to start pushing west more to California, to Nevada, to Oregon territory. There's a lot that's going on with this, and it's tied up into so many different things: economy, society, culture, and just also military. There's a lot of military advantages to be able to get a lot of people one place to some other place. So it's a very convoluted story that is tied into. It's really woven into the fabric of the American story, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you do, because we don't go west unless we have a way of getting there and moving the proper stuff. So what in the Southern Museum, I know you do tours and things through there for schools. What would they be able to see as let's say a 10-year-old coming there? What are you sharing with them at the museum?
Sure. So the first thing you see when you come in past the lobby is our Civil War exhibitions. We have a topical exhibit space that covers a lot of different topics in the Civil War, from what it's like to be a soldier or a civilian in the war, to major events and movements that factor into how the war ended up and where we sort of left off and where we continued after the war ended. We have a large exhibit on the Glover Machine Works. So if you're a kid coming in, you'll see these large train cars and train engines, large to them. Some of them are a little bit smaller gauge, so they would be small engines, but we have a couple that's in our Glover Machine Works, which were constructed in Cobb County, by the way. So from there, you'll eventually go over to the Jolly Education Center, which has a lot of really fun kids interactives. It's fun for the whole family. And at the end of the museum, eventually you'll learn about the Great Locomotive Chase. We have a theater that plays every half hour on the half hour. And eventually, at the very end, you'll see the General Locomotive, which is what we're pretty famous for. It's a very special locomotive, and it's special in the sense of the story that it's tied up in. It's an American Standard 440 locomotive, painted red in the cabin, really large driving wheels. It's a beautiful engine, been here since the 1970s. Kids and families and adults who come in will get a really nice diversity of experience when they go through.
Well, I'm not a kid, but we would take our grandkids to the square, Glover Park, and the first thing that they wanted to do is play on the train. So it's like crazy, but kids are attracted to trains. I mean, I don't care, girl, boy, young, old. I mean, it's fun to that display up there that really just has that train there, and it's like a magnet for the younger kids. They just can't get enough of it. And I watch when I'm up there, I'm just playing on it, and it's almost like, okay, time to go, and they don't want to leave. It's so much fun. So the size of the one on the square obviously is smaller. So are you saying at the Southern Museum there's an actual replica of a train?
We have actually the original General Locomotive, which was built in 1855. So it's a pretty old train.
Right.
But we have the original General Locomotive that was stolen in the Great Locomotive Chase of 1862. So it's an American Standard locomotive. It has 4 front wheels, 4 driving wheels. That's where it gets its little number 440 from in the White classification system, WHYTE. It's a very beautiful locomotive. It's been around for a long time. But it's a real train. It really operated on the Western Atlantic Railroad, which is, if you come to the museum, it's that railroad right outside, goes right through downtown.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's so cool how both Marietta and Kennesaw have a railroad, so close by that you always get a sense of what the railroad's like, because, it's always cutting through downtown. I mean, I don't know how many cities have railroad coming through that. I mean, they do, because that's how cities were built. But we're really close in Cobb County to be able to have Marietta and Kennesaw. And that's right. Woodstock has their version of it. Now that I think about it, it's like you always are going across the railroad track. So I guess every city was built around the railroad. I mean, every early city, because then I guess we went into the suburbs. But yeah, you start thinking about the impact of the railroad, that, hey, when we're moving to a new area, you're going to build around a transportation hub, a station or whatever. So what's the visitation, and what's it cost our viewers to come over there in the days that y'all are open?
So typically our admission fee is $10 for adults. Okay. We offer senior discounts at $8.
Okay.
Kids can get in for $5 unless they're under the age of 3. Then they get in for free.
Okay.
So if you're bringing your grandkids in or your children in, it's a great opportunity for that. We also offer discounts for students at $5 and members of our nation's military for also for $5.
Okay.
Active members of the service. We are open from Tuesday to Saturday, 9:30 to 5 p.m.
Okay.
So it's a great opportunity to come in on the weekends. And that's we also do offer memberships as well for people who want to save a little money. And there's a lot of actually really great benefits that come with membership as well. Not to oversell.
No. Hey, we were kidding. Our viewers might not know this, but I was telling Joshua, this is a no-sell zone, because we sometimes have people that do sell, but you can't. I don't think you can sell a museum. I mean, that's like that should be sold. It should be. Why should I come to it? And you're giving us a lot of good reasons. So you mentioned something like every 30 minutes, so if I'm coming, how much time would I allocate to really get that experience from the museum?
To really get that experience, the basic experience, I would say 45 to over an hour. There are some people who spend 2 hours at our museum. There's certainly enough information here and enough to do to really get into the weeds. But I'd say at least 45 just to experience a little bit of everything.
Okay.
And frankly, that's not even really counting our theater experience, because we do have a 30-minute educational video that plays every half hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if you factor that in, the exhibits, getting to see some of our interactives, and if you're on a tour, well, that's an entirely different story.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope that gives you a good idea of that.
No, it does. And, somebody shared with me, and I think I had it years ago because I moved out of Kennesaw to Ackworth. So I kind of lost a little of the Kennesaw connection, but the app that you all have, can you share with our viewers, the Kennesaw app? Is the museum on the app?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if the app is still active. I will have to check on that.
Okay. Well, I do know you were giving out some things because a resident here at Overture shared this little card, and it said Kennesaw app. And so I said, let me download it and see and I didn't have a chance to really navigate through it, but it had a lot of activities that were going on in there. So I love apps because I know computer is a little bit different for me, but the apps are on your phone and stuff.
If it has our city event calendar, then you'll find us on the event calendar. We're pretty active in trying to promote that.
So when you're not being the director and guiding people through the experience at the museum, what do you like to do for fun?
What do I like to do for fun?
Yeah.
I really like to just explore new places. I love walking. I'm big into hiking.
Mm-hmm.
Both in nature and in downtown spaces. Kennesaw is a wonderful place to appreciate some of that. I really enjoy just hanging out with some of my friends. I love going to concerts, symphonies. I actually am very glad I'm back up in North Georgia, just because I can go to the Atlanta Opera when I want to.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of really great opportunities up in this Atlanta area, and in Kennesaw in particular.
Yeah, there is.
I love the Braves too. Definitely.
Yes, I know. All my family is Philly fans. I was like the only one in the text that was given some Braves stuff. So now I don't have a chance because the Phillies are rocking. But my mom is 93 and she's a Phillies fan. So having the Phillies beat us, I said, it's for mom, so I wasn't as upset as I would. But as we close down, there's, I know we got an amphitheater that's being built. Why don't you update? Do you know anything about time frame of that finishing up?
Time frame, last I heard, would be it's not going to be this year. I know that. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be this year. Okay. I think it's going to take a little bit longer. I think you're going to have to talk to the mayor about that.
Okay. Well,
that's changing.
Yeah, we'll put a question in the box because we have to have something to ask them. And if the mayor doesn't know, nobody knows. So,
check on that because I think.
And Bartino will remind me to ask Derek that because we did see him over at a ribbon cutting ceremony over at Walton, the new Walton property. Yeah, he goes up to all these things. Man, I tell you, that is a well-connected, very involved mayor. So that is good that you have leadership like that over there at Kennesaw. So as I want to respect your time because they're not going to give you all day to be on a podcast. So we're gonna wind it down. So do you? We always have our guest with a final word that our viewers might be able to take away. would you have like an insight that you'd want our viewers to know about?
I would say that, just to bring focus back to the museum for a second, there are so many amazing people who are passionate about our community's history from the time that we were just a little shanty town on the side of the Western and Atlantic Railroad, up into the city that we're continuing to develop today, from with a strong downtown core to being a very large college town now. I mean, there's so much history here in Kennesaw, and the Southern Museum is a really great place to experience some of that. And to just get a sense of our place in the world, because Southern history and American history is so fascinating and complicated. And for many reasons, Kennesaw is on the map.
Oh, that's awesome. And I did fail to, and I kind of know where you are. Aren't you near the Lazy Lavador and the cow, the ice cream shop?
That's right. We're right across from the Frozen Cow and the Lazy Lab, on Cherokee Street. And we have parking behind us at basically, if you turn onto Shirley from there, you can get into our main parking space. But we're right beside the Western and Atlantic Railroad. So right in downtown. So if you see the railroad, we're pretty close by.
Awesome. Well, I tell you, Joshua, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us and sharing some insights into the museum. I know once people kind of understand that, and I'm one of them in that category, with the railroad and the steam engine, to understand how it developed our whole industrial base is really interesting. So for kids out there, I think it's ideal to understand that, because without the railroad, we're like, I don't know where, well, we eventually, I guess, would have had it. But thank you so much for sharing really the insights into how the steam engine was able to impact our industrial base. So thank you. Thank you so much, Joshua. We appreciate you being on Kennesaw Happening podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.